Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking about the first kind of overarching story in one of the most iconic runs of comics, Green Lantern and Green Arrow by Denny and Neal Adams. Now I'm going to be talking about the first 6 issues of this run, and it is generally considered to be one of the most iconic runs in all of comic book history. Really early part of what was responsible for bringing DC out of the Silver Age. Denny O'Neil and Neal Adams' run began in 1970, and it lasted, I believe, 13 issues, one of which was a reprint. I could be wrong on that, though. Hold on a minute. 13 issues, not counting the reprint. And yeah, it is a good run. Like, as you'll see throughout the video, the artwork's gorgeous. The writing is really good, especially for the time. I do think, like, in retrospect, I do think the writing maybe does have a couple of flaws in it. But overall, the stories are enjoyable enough that it doesn't bug me. And it's just cool to see two such iconic characters, like, teamed up together regularly. Especially when they both just so happen to be some of my favorite characters of all time. And then, yeah, for a little background on where the characters are at the time, Green Lantern is kind of just doing his thing, adventures, space cop. The first 75 issues of the 60s Green Lantern comic, they're pretty rough around the edges, honestly. Green Lantern wasn't doing very well at the newsstand at the time. It wasn't selling very well. So, the executive team at DC, the editorial mandate was, we need to get Green Lantern to sell better, so let's throw in another fairly popular character, but one who had never really held down his own comic before. So they decided, Green Arrow, perfect. And the two had worked together in the Justice League in the past. So overall, it just seemed to be a good solution. Green Arrow at this time has lost his fortune, because at his inception point, his creation as a character, he was a millionaire, but then at some point he gave up all of his money so that he wouldn't. I forget why, honestly, but he's not the millionaire that he had been for most of his history up to this point. And then, yeah, so that's kind of where the two characters are, and throughout this series, throughout the story, you'll kind of see where they're very much so trying to make a point, and I think that's interesting. I think that's all well and good. You know, there's a time and place for that, but yeah, I think it is just overall a very interesting set of issues. I think it's a fascinating set of stories and actually one of the key pieces of comic book history. Like I said, we're going to be touching on basically just the first half of this run, and you'll see why when we get to the end. It's as good of a dropping off point as you get in this run. But yeah, honestly, I'm ready to just hop into our story today, which opens on Green Lantern flying through the streets of Star City, and where he sees an old fat guy getting roughed up on the streets. So Green Lantern tosses the attackers like a salad and sends him off to jail. After sending the attacker to jail, Green Lantern helps dust off the fat guy, but the people around the scene start throwing cans at Green Lantern until he gets mad at them. But then Green Arrow steps in, and he's also mad at Green Lantern. But Green Arrow takes the time to explain what's going on to Green Lantern. So he takes him into a nearby building, a slum, and Green Arrow shows Green Lantern around the roughed up house. It's been overfilled with people. And Green Arrow explains that the fat guy that Green Lantern saved is the landlord of the building, who is unwilling to make necessary repairs, and he's raising rent trying to evict the tenants so he can build a parking lot. Green Lantern then has a brief conversation with one of the tenants, where he becomes convicted to go seek justice. We then see Green Lantern charge up his ring before he flies off to confront the landlord, and Hal spends the next hour trying to reason with the landlord, but to no avail. And eventually the landlord has his thugs try to strong-arm Lantern, but Hal is Green Lantern's real name, Hal just starts throwing punches, and when he tries to put some strong-arm tactics on the landlord, the Guardians of the Universe, the bosses of the Green Lantern Corps, call him off. So Green Lantern flies off to Oa, the home planet of the Guardians, where he receives a slap on the wrist from the Guardians, as well as a special assignment to divert a meteor storm and cool off. After Hal's done with the storm, he flies back to Earth, wanting to go where he is needed. We then cut to Earth, where we see Green Arrow in the landlord's office trying to extort money from him, basically trying to run a protection scheme on the landlord, demanding $25,000 be brought to him later that night. That night, we see two of the landlord's thugs come to the meeting point to try and kill Green Arrow, but instead they shoot a dummy, and Green Arrow takes them down, hard. Green Arrow then goes to investigate the tape recorder he had left near the scene, only to find that it had been struck by a stray bullet and destroyed. In the morning, Green Lantern and Green Arrow pair up and decide to work together, compare notes. Green Lantern comes up with the plan of disguising himself as one of the hitmen. So Green Lantern in disguise walks up to the landlord and gets him to confess to putting a hit out on Green Arrow. Then Green Arrow pulls up with the DA, the district attorney, and they arrest the landlord. Then as a brief epilogue to the story, we see the Guardians contact Hal and charge him with insubordination for defying their orders and going back to Earth to rectify the situation there. But Green Arrow finds that reprehensible and lectures the Guardians about being on their high horse but still interfering with humanity. Oliver then challenges the Guardians to put some boots on the ground on Earth, and the Guardians debate the issue for a week before one of the Guardians comes to Earth and joins Hal and Oliver as they go on a road trip to discover America. We then cut ahead an indiscriminate amount of time, and we see that as the trio drive over the Rocky Mountains, they're attacked by a gang of gunmen. So after Green Lantern and Green Arrow take the gunmen down and question them, the leader of their posse, a man named Jacob, tells the heroes that the crew live in the town of Desolation, a town run by a corrupt businessman named Slapper Soames, who owns the mine in the town, which also happens to be the only work. And he treats the miners like slaves, working them to the bone. But one of them taught himself to play guitar and developed a talent for music and some self-respect before he was seized by Slapper and sentenced to hang. Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and the Guardian then go into the town. We see that the townspeople are riled up and ready to go, mounting a full-on attack on Slapper's compound. But the compound is very heavily fortified, so Green Arrow tries to convince Jacob to wait to attack, but he isn't hearing it. We then cut into the compound where we see the guitar-playing miner, Johnny, is locked up, and that Slapper has decided to hang Johnny for fear of wandering, because he believes that Johnny's got a genuine talent, and that he'll go get himself discovered, and then people will come back to the town and expose the corruption. Back at the bottom of the hill, we see that the townspeople are charging the compound, but the hill's lined with mines, and there are immediate casualties. So Green Lantern and Green Arrow jump into action, with Green Arrow lying down some smoke and Green Lantern taking out the mines and barbed wire before he's surrounded. The Guardians choose that moment to strip away the Green Lantern ring's ability to keep Hal from mortal injury, but Hal's able to punch his way out of the situation before Slapper throws down some gas grenades, causing Green Lantern to get knocked out. We then see a brief scene of the Guardian learning humanity as he protects a little girl from the heat of the battle. Green Arrow's busting heads, leading the charge, taking down machine gunners, until he is knocked out by a pistol whip to the back of the head and brought into Slapper's lair. In the lair, Green Arrow wakes up swinging, taking down Slapper's right-hand man before he gets sneak attacked from behind by Jacob, the leader of the townspeople, who has for the whole story been working for Slapper, riling up the townsmen to move before they were ready so that they would be gunned down easier. But just as Jacob is about to shoot Green Arrow, Green Lantern comes in and melts the pistol, leaving Johnny to take down Slapper, freeing the town, but not without its casualties. Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and the Guardian then strike off on the open road once more. We then cut to Black Canary, who is in Mount Rainier in Washington State, and we see that she is attacked by a biker gang. But she's able to fend them off using her judo moves, but eventually one of the bikers hops on his ride and just runs her over. We then see a mysterious man pick up the Canary and carry her off. We then cut to Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and the Old-Timer, the affectionate name that Hal and Oliver have come up with for the Guardian. They roll up to a nearby Indian reservation so that they can get some food. But after they eat, a group of bikers comes into the restaurant and starts whooping up on the owner. So the heroes suit up and bust some heads. And after Green Lantern and Green Arrow pack up the first two punks, the third tries running away on his bike, but Green Arrow hits him with a net arrow, causing him to wipe out. When the heroes go to investigate the crash, Green Arrow recognizes the bike as belonging to Black Canary. So Green Arrow starts interrogating the rider, who reveals that he stole Canary's bike and left her for dead on the side of the road in Washington. So Oliver flips and starts whooping up on the punk, so Green Lantern has to pull him off so he can cool his head. The next morning, the pair set off in search of Black Canary, and eventually they find her, but she's off, speaking as if she's half asleep. When all of a sudden a man named Joshua walks out of the woodwork and declares Black Canary to be a part of his family, and obviously a cult of some sort. So Green Arrow, in an attempt to get Black Canary to snap out of it, brings her in and kisses her, but Canary pushes him off, going back to Joshua. After Green Lantern and Green Arrow walk away, we see that somewhere deep down the kiss worked, and Black Canary begins to remember who she is and how much she cares for Green Arrow. But those memories are stymied by the voice of Joshua giving the Canary a gun and using some level of mind control against Canary. Back with the Green Lantern and Green Arrow, we see Green Arrow is testy, to say the least, regarding the situation. So after Hal makes a small crack, Green Arrow decks him in the face and leaves Hal at the fire and wanders off in the woods. Eventually he hears the sound of gunshots, so he starts following them. And he finds Black Canary and the rest of Joshua's family doing some target practice before Joshua begins to monologue his plan, explaining that he's going to kill everyone in America who isn't white. Green Arrow then catches on to Joshua's hypnosis, and he fires a flare to alert Green Lantern. But in so doing, he reveals his location and is shot. As the crowd rampages, Green Lantern arrives on the scene and he melts down all the mob's guns before digging a trench around them to contain them. We then see Joshua and Black Canary come across a struggling Green Arrow who's trying to crawl his way to life, as the bullet that had shot him only grazed his head. But Joshua orders Black Canary to shoot and kill Green Arrow. We then see Green Lantern come in and he's observing the situation, noticing that Black Canary is hesitating. So he waits to see if she can break Joshua's control, knowing that if he doesn't, Black Canary will forever doubt whether or not she could have done it on her own. And she does. She breaks the control, but when she drops the gun, Joshua jumps for it, trying to kill Green Arrow. Hal stumps in, punching Joshua out, and causing Joshua to shoot himself in the chest. A couple of days later, as our heroes are sitting by a campfire, their rest is interrupted by the sounds of violence in a nearby part of the forest as a Native American is almost killed. But Green Lantern and Green Arrow stop the murder, and as Green Lantern and Green Arrow listen to the sides of the dispute, we see that the businessman, Mr. Pudd, is trying to kill off the natives because he views them as savages, and and the natives, and that he doesn't want them joining his lumber union. And the other guy claims to own the trees despite a 100-year-old agreement between the U.S. government and the tribe. But all known copies of the agreement are missing or destroyed. Green Lantern and Green Arrow then have a dispute on how to handle the situation, with Green Arrow wanting to rush in guns blazing, but Green Lantern wanting to try to find a way to settle the dispute legally. So the pair split up and Hal flies off, following a lead to a copy of the deed of the deal owned by the son of the last chief of the tribe. And Hal is able to track down the son, but when he gets to his last known address, it is the scene of an active fire. So upon hearing that someone is still inside the building, Hal rushes in to help, but the building comes crashing down around him. After Hal finds the son. But Green Lantern was able to sneak out of the back of the building, and after a few minutes on a respirator, the son tells Green Lantern that the document has been burned in the fire. So Green Lantern, in a last-ditch attempt to resolve the conflict within the confines of the law, goes to Washington, D.C. to grab a congressman that he knows to help litigate the situation. With Green Arrow, we see that he has wandered into the town, and he laments to Black Canary about the broken spirits of the Indians. So he comes up with a solution. The solution we see that very night, when some of Pud's men try to steal some harvest from the Indians, only to be dissuaded by an arrow shot by the spirit of Ulysses Starr, the last chief of the tribe. The spirit makes a series of appearances throughout the night until the tribe is convicted to stand up for itself. The next morning, we see the tribe and the thugs have a showdown near the river's edge. It's shaping up to be a heck of a brawl until Green Lantern shows up and separates the groups, tells them to go home until the congressman can look over the case. But Green Arrow isn't having it, and he starts lipping off, challenging Green Lantern to a fist fight, a fight that Green Lantern takes, tackling Oliver into the river, and the pair exchange blows for a few minutes until they're both knocked out by a passing log. Once they wake up, we see that the true resolution came from a combination of their efforts, with the congressman arresting Pud for the arson, burning down the house of the chief's son, and some of the Indians agreeing to go to Congress and fight for themselves. We then see Green Lantern and Green Arrow and the old-timer are run off a bridge in their truck, and when Green Lantern brings them to the surface, we see the trio get on board a boat hauling toxic chemicals across the ocean. But once they are on board the ship, there is an explosion in the boiler room and Green Lantern is knocked out. And the old-timer whisks Green Lantern off to seek medical attention, otherwise he will die. Back on the boat, Green Arrow helps throw the toxic barrels overboard to keep the boat from completely exploding. The next morning, the trio reunites before a voice from nowhere calls down to one of them, the voice of the Guardians accusing their brother, the old-timer, of being clouded by his emotions and choosing to save Hal's life instead of stopping the toxic chemicals from entering the ocean. And for this crime, the crime of choosing to save one life over choosing to save the planet, the old-timer has been set to appear before the Tribune, a group of ancient lawmakers and law enforcers on a far-off planet. So Green Lantern and Green Arrow choose to accompany the old-timer as witnesses for him. We then see the trio fly off to the planet where Hal is asked to surrender his ring and Green Arrow asked to lay down his bow, as there are no weapons allowed before the Tribune. But as the group approaches the court, Hal and the old-timer notice that something is off. A feeling that is deepened when they arrive in the courtroom and they see only one judge, and that judge is set on vengeance, not justice. But when Green Arrow makes an objection before the court, all three of the defendants are gagged. The judge then sentences the old-timer to the death penalty for his crimes, and then also throws Green Lantern and Green Arrow in for the crime of contempt of court, which he also sentences them to death for. Green Lantern and Green Arrow are then thrown down into a jail with the members of the Tribune. Just outside the cell, we see that there is a hulking robot serving as the guard for the prison. So Green Arrow gets to work, using the supplies around him to craft a makeshift bow and arrow. Using explosives he had snuck into the court, Ollie is able to take down the guard. The crew then go off to find Green Lantern's ring, but the robot from earlier still has it. Green Arrow, along with some of the Tribune, tackle the robot, giving Hal time to grab his ring and melt down the robot. But at that very moment, the execution bell tolls for the old-timer, and we see that the judge has begun the process of killing the old-timer. The judge has also tried to gas the heroes, but Green Lantern is able to create a fan and disperse the gas. Green Lantern and Green Arrow then go running into the execution chamber, and Green Arrow takes care of the judge as Green Lantern rescues the old-timer. We then jump to Oa, where we see that once again the old-timer is standing trial before the Guardians. And we see the Guardians pass judgment on the old-timer, stripping him of his immortality and sentencing him to live out the rest of his life on the Guardians' homeworld, Maltus. Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Black Canary accompany the old-timer to Maltus, but when they touch down on the planet, they notice that there's a lot of people there, like a lot of people there. And once they leave Green Lantern's bubble, we see the Black Canary is immediately attacked. So after a few punches are thrown, Green Lantern lifts everybody on a platform and they decide to do some investigating. So the old-timer leads the crew to a historical record buried deep underground. Hal then digs it up, and Green Arrow and Black Canary and the old-timer go in to find out what's going on. And what they learn is that a meteor passed over Maltus that caused all of its people to lose the ability to have children. So they created hyper-aging clones, but they made too many of them, causing overpopulation. Especially as the effects of the meteor wore off over time and people have natural kids. The crew then look over the planet and decide to help by shutting down the cloning facility. So to get in, they dig a tunnel around the big dome, isolating the cloning plant. But when they get in, they're confronted by a guard, this big bruiser-looking guy. And after trashing Green Lantern and Green Arrow, Black Canary uses a judo throw to take him down. We then see the mastermind of the cloning operations, an old lady, come rushing out with two more guards. Green Lantern and Green Arrow take down the guards, and Black Canary takes down the old lady. At that moment, the crowds of Maltus come rushing in and trash the machines. Green Lantern then wants to return to Oa to appeal the old-timer's sentence, but the old-timer objects, seeing Maltus as his opportunity to do good. And so the heroes leave him on the planet and return to their lives. And that's the story. That's the conclusion of the first arc of Green Lantern and Green Arrow. And something that as I was reading through my summary of these stories, something that you don't really get the sense of is how long Green Lantern and Green Arrow are on this journey. Because at the end of the first issue, they set off on a road trip to discover America. The implication is that they're on the road for months and months. And it's an interesting idea, honestly. And they really only go 4.5 issues with it. Because, yeah, they do Desolation, the 2 Indian Reservation issues, and then, or I guess 3.5 then. And then the Crash at the beginning of issue 3. And that's really it. It's really the only time we see them as hard-traveling heroes. But it's such an interesting concept, honestly. And I do really like it as a concept. And something else that, again, we don't see much of a sense of is, in the middle of one of those stories, Green Arrow claims Green Lantern to be his best friend. These two characters are truly friends, and they're truly friends with the old-timer as well. So that, whenever they're sitting around the campfire, it's 3 friends sitting together. Which is, to me, it's just one of those one of those cool things, and something that I noticed I didn't really give a sense of in the summary portion of this video. But yeah, overall, these are just some really good comics. I think the writing in them is a little stiff. By the end of the the fourth story in here, it is very refreshing to see Green Lantern and Green Arrow kind of have their fist fight, because throughout the comic, Green Lantern and Green Arrow have been lightly arguing and debating over how to handle various situations, whether or not they should do X, Y, or Z, whether who's right, who's wrong. Unfortunately, this is where I say the comics maybe not is very much so a product of its time, and for its time was very well written, and maybe now looking back, it's less so. Green Arrow is always right in these issues, and that's fine, but I think it would have been a better writing balance to come up with scenarios where both of them were right. And you do kind of start to get that in the last two stories where Green Lantern's very much so taking the reins. He's doing more of the action in the last two stories, the story on Maltus and the story with the Tribune. Those two issues are very much so Green Lantern's taking charge. And then another really interesting part. So yeah, Green Arrow's always right, and Green Lantern is written to be very ignorant throughout these stories. For example, the one on the Indian reservation where they fight at the end. Green Lantern, they include a line in that comic where Green Lantern doesn't think that shows that Green Lantern didn't think that the fire that burned down the chief's son's apartment, he didn't think that was arson right away. His first thought was that was just a random fire, even though that's what the villains of the story end up getting arrested for, is that very same arson. And that's just one of those kind of really, you didn't even think that moments. But, and again, it's not necessarily a problem, but it does show some of that really this is a much better series of stories for Green Arrow than it is for Green Lantern. At least up until this point. Later on in the run, we do see more Green Lantern come out, but yeah, overall I think that these are just really interesting stories. One of the most interesting parts about them, especially given their time and place in comics history, is, especially for the first chunk of stories, there's no super villains, there's no costume character. The only costume characters are Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Overall, it's just they're dealing with these very human problems. And that does provide a really interesting element to this whole thing, is that they're dealing with the shady landlord right at the start. Then they meet this guy in Desolation named Slapper, who's taking advantage of workers. Then they meet who's next? Then they meet a cult. Then they meet a white supremacist cult leader with he has mind control powers, but that's not really a highlighted part of the story. That's not the important part of the story. Then they go on and they fight these two racist dudes who want the lumber rights for a town. They're all very human threats. Even with the Tribune, it's obviously not human. And then same with the old lady at the end of the last issue. Not human, but pretty close. Definitely not a supervillain in any case. The closest you get is the judge of the Tribune, but even then, it's not really. And it's just a very interesting set of stories. And all the characters are written pretty well. Like I said, I have some issue with the way Green Lantern's written, but all the other characters they do a pretty good job with. I mean, Black Canary's kind of just there, I'll be honest, but even so, she's interesting, and especially in the final issue of the story, she kind of just shows up, like out of nowhere, and I'm like, I as I was reading it, I was like, huh, I don't know what the deal is. And that's especially amplified because I'm reading these out of the 80s reprint of the Denny Neal Adams run, and the way these work is, you saw I just flashed 3 issues. They're 3 double-sized issues, so they each have 2 issues of the original run in there, and this last one has the issue on Maltus and has the issue on with the Tribune, and Black Canary kind of just shows up between the 2 of them, and there's no explanation of it, and it doesn't seem as if like hardly any time has passed. But that's a very, very, very small complaint, honestly. But overall, I think the artwork on this series is that's some top tier artwork. And Neal Adams very often delivers top tier artwork. He just draws figures and faces in such a way, very much so not of 1970 comics. The way Neal Adams draw, there's a couple moments in here that I hope I got the pictures of, where the facial expressions are just on point. The poses are dynamic, but still understandable. There's the artwork in this run is just top notch. There's a lot of just dynamic poses. There's a lot of dramatic angles, especially from DC at this time. This type of artwork was just super rare and unheard of, and you saw that right away on the cover for the first Green Lantern Green Arrow issue, which I don't actually have, obviously. And then these, and normally, something that I like to do is be like, oh, you can find these issues fairly cheap. No, you can't. Get this. I'd recommend getting this series as a trade paperback or the 80s reprint miniseries. Those are the only ways that it's really affordable, and it's a great run. And the covers for this series are also just gorgeous, really cool. I think overall the series stands to me as a testament to a good artist working with a mediocre writer is better than a mediocre artist working with a good writer. Because throughout the DC mythos at this time, we see that Neal Adams specifically is able to just produce good comics. His run on Brave and the Bold is so much better than the run before it and the issues after it until Jim Aparo starts on it. Neal Adams' run on X-Men arguably saved the comic. Roy Thomas was also definitely a part of it. Neal Adams' Avengers artwork is gorgeous. And it seems that he just almost always produces a higher quality of writing with the writers that he works with. And Green Lantern, Green Arrow is one of the areas where you really see that. Because even after Neal Adams leaves the project with issue 89, when it gets revived with issue 90, Denny O'Neil is working with Mike Grell after that, and the comic just loses a lot of its oomph. The artwork is not nearly as good after Neal Adams leaves, and the writing is also significantly worse. And I don't really know why, but anyway, that's a story for another day. Overall, I think these are some really good stories. They really highlight Oliver Queen, who he is, his overwhelming, overriding sense of justice really well. And yeah, I do wish we'd gotten a little bit more balance of that between him and Hal, but it's all right. Like they're still good comics. That's kind of just my personal problem with them. But yeah, overall, I think that yeah, it's just a good comic, good story, good art. Overall, just good. And yeah, maybe this is gonna be a bit of a hot take, so get ready. Maybe a bit overrated, but still very good. And honestly, yeah, that's the thing. And I do think that overall they're just much better Green Arrow stories than they are Green Lantern stories, which is odd because they technically take place in the Green Lantern comic. And Green Lantern just comes across as naive, ignorant, and honestly just a little dumb in a lot of these stories. And even the stories where his logic and reasoning work, I don't know. It just to me it could have done with striking a little bit of a better balance. And later stories with Green Lantern and Green Arrow did do that, where they would strike a balance, more of a balance between the two characters. But overall, I think that this era, this hard traveling heroes era, where with Green Lantern and Green Arrow on the road, trying to solve problems, discover the country. I think it just still is good. It's just it just is good. Maybe it's a bit overrated, like I said, but still good. Anyway, that's really all I got on this one. Would highly recommend. Give it a read for yourself. It's this run in general is one of the most influential pieces of comic book history. It's really good. It's really what brought DC Comics out of its Silver Age. It's really one of the first things. Obviously, DC didn't fully come out of the Silver Age until until the 80s Crisis on Infinite Earths. But this series really did kind of start people talking about DC again after the Marvel explosion of the early 60s. But yeah, that's really all I've got on this one. Iconic, worth a read. I would say honestly it's just worth it. If you have a a bookshelf of trade paperbacks, it's worth it to have Green Lantern and Green Arrow be one of them. But that's all I got. So I'm just another guy named James. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.